Alright guys, so this is the day one discussion for Call Me Proteus. So the background is that this is science fiction and it's written in first person. The first sentence establishes a lot. What is happening? We talked about two men are roaming inside of the narrator. And so what can we assume about the narrator? That he is a spaceship. And so reading on, we establish who the narrator is. He is the starship. And what do the men roaming inside refer to the starship as? An old tub. So we find out why they are roaming the starship. And that is because they are interested in buying it. And what are the men saying about the ship? That the ship is in bad shape and needs to be sold. The ship is fearful of being scrapped. And so he starts talking about how he's too young to die. What does he say he knows is true, though? He knows parts of him are old, but inside he is still young. He then starts to reminisce about his friend Bud. Who was Bud? A communications officer. What did Bud used to do to the ship? Talk to him. What did Proteus the ship do to surprise Bud one day? Talked back. Proteus describes coming out of a fog and forming words. He was also surprised. Why do you think Bud wanted to keep Proteus a secret? Because maybe they wouldn't handle it correctly. They had many conversations, but what happened to Bud? He was injured in a matter storm. When Bud was replaced, what kind of guy replaced him? A no-nonsense kind of guy. What happened when Proteus had tried to talk to the new comm officer? He thought it was malfunctioning. He punched it and sent juice shocking through him. What are the men planning to do to Proteus? Scrap him. Why can't he just fly off? Because he is out of fuel. What does Proteus notice? That port 19, just a few ports down, is flashing its fuel light. So what does Proteus do? Flips his number 61 upside down to a 19 and flashes his fuel light. Why is this part so suspenseful? Who is he using to help him? A slow servo robot. The delivery truck train delivers his fuel and he was anxious to fly away. Proteus's robot comes back on board and switches off. How does this make Proteus feel? Lonely. How does Proteus describe his feelings after taking off? He was sad and empty. Where was Proteus heading? To the star men called Aladfar. Proteus said he would never return to Earth. What does he now call himself? An outlaw. His speakers were still on, and what did he hear? A voice from his maintenance compartment saying something was on fire. How did he put the fire out? One of his reflexes handled it. What does Proteus realize is on board? A boy. How had the boy gotten on ship? He stowed away. It compares his being shook around to a pool ball being thrown around. What is this? A metaphor. How had the boy gotten on ship? He stowed away. Oh, that was the same slide. Sorry, I remember that now. All right. Why had the boy started a fire, and what did he use? He used rags because he was freezing. What did Proteus do for the boy? Elevate the temperature and equalize the gravity. What was Proteus worried about for the boy? Providing him food. How does Proteus scare the boy? He speaks to him over the loudspeakers and asks him who he is. Who does the boy think is talking to him? The robot. What does the boy say his name is? Tom. What is the boy upset about? That Proteus isn't going back to Earth. What does Proteus tell him he will have to do? Use a lifeboat. What does Proteus tell Tom he needs to learn to get back to Earth? Math and physics. What does Proteus say about humans? That they are so illogical and inefficient and unstable. Tom reminds him that humans made him. Proteus tells him there is much to do. Why couldn't Proteus use his vegetable tank? It had not been reseeded. Then Tom compares Proteus and the robot to what? A ventriloquist and a dummy. This is a metaphor. What did the robot find? Cookies, Cokes, gum, vitamins, and protein drinks. The big treasure he found was 2 packs of seeds. So Proteus gives him a chocolate bar and cream soda for lunch, and it took a while for the seeds to produce, but they finally did. What does Proteus keep him busy with? Schoolwork. Why was Tom sad one day? It was his birthday. What did Proteus do to try to cheer him up? Turn the lights and the oxygen up. What does Proteus want Tom to practice? Landing in atmosphere. They were close by a planet called Ostrakhan. Why was it dangerous for them to go there? It had been placed off limits by the United Galaxy. Why was Proteus starting to feel sad? Because Tom was getting close to being ready to go back to Earth soon. What does Proteus accidentally call Tom? Bud. So he sends the robot with him and they take off. They land safely and he can still talk to him through the lifeboat box. He tells them not to stray too far. What did one of the trees do when they landed? Uprooted and jumped and rooted somewhere else. What does Tom see in the grass? SOS. Proteus then remembers why Ostrakhan was off limits but does not inform us. Tom sees the SOS and thinks someone needs help. When some trees take off, what did they see behind them? A man pointing a gun at them. The man then holsters his gun and says that he was just making sure they were friendly. Why does the man say he's there? He's been shipwrecked. Proteus then reveals who this man is. Who was he? Baron Ur, an exile. He then tells Tom over the lifeboat speaker and the man pulls a gun on him. Then he turns around and shoots a tree that had moved to reveal his identity. The tree was crippled and they used the phrase moan like the wind, which was a simile. What does Proteus reveal was Ur's crime? Wheeler and dealer, a convict. Proteus inches the robot closer to Ur as he thinks back. What did Proteus try to do? Use the robot to attack him, but he turned around and shot the robot and then boarded the boat. Ur realizes he is on ship with no human crew and laughs. What does Ur plan to do? Go conquer and rob planets. How did the idea of this make Proteus feel? Surge with power. Proteus didn't protest because it was tempting to hand over power. He wouldn't have to think for himself. If things went wrong, it wouldn't be his fault. As time passed, Proteus began to feel guilty because Tom was making him clean shoes and do other meaningless chores. What does Proteus do that Tom doesn't know about? He changes course. And so Proteus then tells him to get back to schoolwork. And then while he's teaching chemistry, he slips him a coded message that says, when you hear a siren, hop in the lifeboat. Proteus was worried that Tom didn't get the message. How did he know he got the message? He messaged back, ready. Proteus compares his air conditioning system to his breath or lungs. What type of figurative language is this? A metaphor. What happened when Proteus sounded the alarm? Ur already knew what they were trying to do. He threatened to shoot Tom. How did Ur know their plan? He could read their code. What did Ur decide to do? He decided to jump out with a lifeboat because they were close enough to raise. He exited the ship and was gone, and Tom was so upset because he let Ur go. What was the only planet close enough for a lifeboat to reach? Ostrakhan. And so ultimately, he is going to have to take Tom back to Earth.